Welcome to War Bios, the podcast where we delve into the most pivotal battles in history, examining the strategic context, operational art, and human cost of conflict. I'm your host, General Biography, and today we're going to explore one of the most decisive battles of the Napoleonic Wars, the Battle of Austerlitz. This engagement, fought on December 2, 1805, is often regarded as Napoleon's masterpiece, a triumph of tactical genius that cemented his reputation as a military commander. To understand the significance of Austerlitz, we must first examine the complex web of alliances and rivalries that led to this pivotal confrontation. The early 19th century was a time of great upheaval in Europe, with the French Revolution having sparked a chain reaction of conflicts that would eventually engulf the entire continent. Napoleon Bonaparte, the brilliant and ambitious French general, had risen to power in the late 1790s and was determined to spread the revolutionary ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity across Europe. As we navigate the intricate landscape of European politics during this period, it's essential to consider the key players involved. The Austrian Empire, under the leadership of Emperor Francis II, was a major power that had long been at odds with France. The Russians, led by Tsar Alexander I, were also wary of Napoleon's expansionist ambitions and had formed an alliance with the Austrians to counter the French threat. In the summer of 1805, Napoleon's Grande Armée was poised to strike at the heart of Europe. The French army, numbering over 200,000 soldiers, was a formidable force that had been honed by years of campaigning in Italy and Germany. As they marched towards Austria, they encountered the Austrian army, led by General Karl Mack von Lieberich, at the Battle of Ginsburg on October 9, 1805. The Austrians were defeated, and their army began to retreat towards Ulm. The city of Ulm, situated in the Danube River Valley, was a strategic location that controlled access to Vienna, the Austrian capital. Napoleon's forces surrounded the city, trapping the Austrian army inside. After a brief siege, General Mack von Lieberich surrendered his army on October 20, 1805, marking a significant victory for Napoleon. Meanwhile, the Russian army, led by General Mikhail Kutuzov, was marching towards Vienna, hoping to link up with the remnants of the Austrian army and challenge Napoleon's dominance. The Russians had been allied with the Austrians since 1799, and they saw Napoleon's aggression as a threat to their own interests in Eastern Europe. As the Russian army advanced, it encountered Napoleon's forces at the Battle of Dürnstein on November 11, 1805. Although the battle was tactically indecisive, it marked a strategic victory for Napoleon, as he was able to drive the Russians back and gain control of the Danube River Valley. As the two armies converged on the town of Brno, in what is now the Czech Republic, the stage was set for a confrontation that would decide the fate of Europe. The countryside around Brno, with its rolling hills, wooded valleys, and snow-covered fields, would become the backdrop for one of the most famous battles in history. On November 27, 1805, Napoleon's forces occupied the city of Brno, and he began to make plans for a final showdown with the combined Russian and Austrian armies. The winter landscape of 1805 was harsh and unforgiving, with temperatures plummeting below freezing and snowdrifts reaching as high as 10 feet in some areas. The soldiers on both sides were exhausted, hungry, and cold, but they knew that the battle ahead would be a decisive one. As we now delve into the heart of the battle, it's essential to consider the tactics and strategies employed by both sides. The winter landscape of 1805, with its rolling hills, wooded valleys, and snow-covered fields, presented a unique set of challenges for the soldiers on both sides. Napoleon, ever the master strategist, had carefully chosen the battlefield, selecting a site that would allow him to maximize his advantages in artillery and maneuverability. The battle began on December 2, 1805, as the French army, numbering over 65,000 soldiers, faced off against the combined Russian and Austrian army, which totaled around 73,000 troops. The French forces were arrayed in a series of corps, each consisting of infantry, cavalry, and artillery, while the Russians and Austrians formed a more traditional line of battle. Napoleon's plan was to weaken the enemy's center and then attack their flanks, using his superior artillery and maneuverability to outflank and encircle them. He began by launching a diversionary attack on the enemy's right flank, using his cavalry to probe the Russian and Austrian lines. Meanwhile, he secretly massed his main force on the French right, preparing to launch a decisive blow against the enemy's center. As the battle raged on, Napoleon's tactics proved to be highly effective. The French artillery, under the command of General Jean-Baptiste Eblé, pounded the Russian and Austrian lines, weakening their defenses and creating gaps that the French infantry could exploit. The French cavalry, led by Marshal Joachim Murat, performed a series of daring charges, breaking through the enemy's lines and causing chaos and disorder. The Russians and Austrians, meanwhile, struggled to coordinate their efforts, with General Mikhail Kutuzov and Emperor Francis II often at odds over strategy. Their army was also hampered by poor communication and logistics, which made it difficult for them to respond effectively to Napoleon's maneuvers. As the day wore on, the French gains became increasingly significant. By mid-afternoon, they had broken through the enemy's center and were pushing deep into their rear. The Russians and Austrians were in full retreat, with many of their soldiers fleeing in panic. The Battle of Austerlitz was a crushing victory for Napoleon, with the French suffering around 9,000 casualties, while the Russians and Austrians lost over 27,000 men. The battle marked a significant turning point in European history, cementing Napoleon's reputation as a military genius and paving the way for his eventual domination of the continent. In the aftermath of the battle, Napoleon's forces occupied Vienna, and he began to dictate terms to the Austrians and Russians. The Treaty of Pressburg, signed on December 26, 1805, imposed harsh penalties on Austria, including significant territorial losses and a massive indemnity. The treaty also marked the beginning of a new era of French dominance in Europe, with Napoleon's power and influence reaching its zenith. As we now explore the aftermath of the battle, it's essential to consider how Napoleon's victory shaped the course of European politics and society. The Treaty of Pressburg, signed on December 26, 1805, imposed harsh penalties on Austria, including significant territorial losses and a massive indemnity. This marked the beginning of a new era of French dominance in Europe, with Napoleon's power and influence reaching its zenith. The consequences of Austerlitz were far-reaching. The battle led to the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire, a loose confederation of German states that had existed for centuries. In its place, Napoleon created the Confederation of the Rhine, a league of German states allied with France. This marked a significant shift in the balance of power in Europe, as French influence extended deep into Central Europe. The Battle of Austerlitz also had a profound impact on European society. The spread of revolutionary ideas and the rise of nationalism were hastened by Napoleon's conquests. As French armies marched across Europe, they brought with them the ideals of the French Revolution: liberty, equality, and fraternity. While these ideals were often imposed through force, they nonetheless helped to shape the course of modern European history. However, the consequences of Austerlitz were not all positive. The battle marked the beginning of a long period of conflict in Europe, as various coalitions formed to resist French dominance. The Fourth Coalition, which included Prussia, Russia, and their allies, was formed in 1806 and would eventually lead to the disastrous invasion of Russia in 1812. As we reflect on the Battle of Austerlitz, it's clear that this pivotal engagement had far-reaching consequences for European history. Napoleon's victory cemented his reputation as a military genius, but it also set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately lead to his downfall. The rise and fall of empires, the spread of revolutionary ideas, and the shaping of modern European society, all these and more were influenced by the Battle of Austerlitz. As the great historian Georges Lefebvre once said, the Battle of Austerlitz was a masterpiece of military strategy, but it was also a turning point in history, marking the beginning of a new era of French dominance and the end of the old European order. Today, we remember Austerlitz as a testament to the power of human ingenuity and the enduring legacy of Napoleon's genius. In conclusion, our exploration of the Battle of Austerlitz has taken us on a journey through the complexities of military strategy, the nuances of historical context, and the far-reaching consequences of this pivotal engagement. Thank you for listening to War Bios. That's all for today's War Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, I'm General Biography reminding you to keep marching toward victory.